Hello, and welcome to Mark Void's Warranty. You might not recognize me, but it is indeed me, Mark! And welcome to Mark Void's Warranty. We're going to have all sorts of fun today for our Halloween special. I know you've been waiting all year for Halloween to come back around. I'm excited too. But here's what I've got for you. You might recognize this game from the 80s. This is Contra. This is the famous up, up, down, down, left, right, BA select start business. The invention of cheat codes. I know, it's exciting. And it comes in this little gamepad that's got all sorts of these cool little buttons on it. Up all the regular, I guess that's PlayStation stuff. Up, down, left, right. A little resistive shift doohickey, select start buttons, plus a couple more that I don't know what they do. Some finger triggers. And all of this also has a camera, USB charge, on-off switch, audio, video. Or no, I'm sorry, that's two headphones. Headphone and a TV out. Little spot for a micro SD card. All of this for like $25 off of eBay. Now, it certainly has flaws, but for $25 you can't really complain. I mean, that'd be as silly as complaining about a free course. Right? Anyhow, we're going to see what's inside, what makes this thing tick, and see if there's anything we can learn from it. At this price point, though, there's absolutely no way to even buy the parts. No way to buy the board, no way to buy the screen. You can't buy any of this to build your own. It is so incredibly cheaper to just go out and purchase it that it's not even funny. And that can be kind of depressing sometimes. Sometimes you want to make your own stuff. It's just not economically viable option. So the first thing I'm going to do here is go after 2 case screws that are hidden down here. Or might be 4 case screws. There's 1, 2. Whenever you're taking something apart, always start with the obvious stuff. If you don't know where to start there. So if you've got some screws, go after the screws. That should, let's see. Hopefully let me pop this thing open. There we go. We are in. So the first thing that we see, we've got our little speaker up here. And I wonder if we can pop that free. If we were going to disassemble this and worry about putting it back together, those 2 little speaker tabs would be the ones to go after. Polarity doesn't really matter since there's only a single speaker. We've got a couple of edge mount snap action switches, which are kind of cool. Might be something fun to incorporate into a future project if we ever need something like that. Mini USB. Looks like it's a through hole. We've got our 2 things there. We've got a battery. You know, something maybe we better. Well, you know something. We don't have to sit there and desolder it. Can just clip it. So it's taped pretty firmly to the bottom side there. Polarity on that certainly does matter. So it looks like we're at 1500 milliamp hour, 3.7 volt. Decent amount of juice. All right, so what else do we have hiding down in here? We've got the camera module. So it actually, I played with this right before we came on air. It legit has a camera. It's not bad. It's like a 720 or a 1080p. You can hook this up to your computer. You can take pictures. You can use this as a webcam. They really kind of went out of their way to build a lot of functionality into this thing, especially at the price point. So we're going to keep looking. This is the backside of the I mean, it's really kind of a smooth little action. I don't know how you describe that switch, but it's like a little joystick. It's really kind of cool. Might save that. I don't know. If we do, I'll teach you how to do some desoldering today. Can come in handy. There's a speaker mark there. So I guess you could put speakers here too. Usually that's what those little round things are. And then for some reason there's a microphone right here. I don't know what that does, but I do recommend learning how to say, "I know you're listening, comrade," in Russian, just to keep them on their toes. So right now I'm just looking for case screws. I think I need a smaller screwdriver to make my life easier. I'm sorry, not case screws, but board mount screws. And that's going to keep happening. Let me mute that. Okay. We are having fun, aren't we? Just taking stuff apart. If you have any questions as we go through, please do feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer them. I should probably move that camera ever so slightly this way so I'm on screen more, or off screen in the other direction. Okay. Let's see if I missed any. I usually miss one or two. Okay, now we've got a little ZIF connector. Zero insertion force. And the trouble with these is they are really, really, really easy to break when you take them apart. So that releases our display. And it's really quite the sizable display. Something else, if you wanted to go source it, I'd probably say go look at, you know, someplace like buydisplay.com. Just a single display and shipping, a single display that size is going to run you, you know, the entire cost of this unit. Looks like it's taped in, but hopefully if I'm careful, I can get underneath it. Oh man, come on. There we go. Oh, I kind of messed up the metal a little. But there's the display. Free and easy. It's a big one. All right, this is our first look at the board. We've got a two-side assembly, which by itself is somewhat expensive. Got a giant integrated circuit on one side, memory, maybe some RAM and ROM. Hard to know exactly. Little bits of foam, double-sided foam that are just there for probably keep things from rattling and structural support. A red capacitor, or is that a crystal? I don't know what that is. That color kind of surprises me. Another crystal here. All right. Well, let's start grabbing a couple things off of here and demonstrating a tiny bit of desoldering technique. Just in case you ever did have one of these that you needed to rework, might be something useful for you to know. I don't know. All right. One thing that you want to do is make sure that you always have a tip that is shiny and clean to work with. So for that, you have to tin your tip. I need to get on my smoke absorber there. So always shiny and clean, and then I usually dust it off with a metal wick there. Not a metal wick, a metal sponge. Are we still getting to temp? We are a little low. Let's get higher. There we go. So for wires, it's pretty easy. You can just heat them up, crank them on out. But if you had to do something like this, what would you possibly do? It can be a bit of a pain. Right? Because by the time that you heat up one, the other stuff's going to be cooled down. So the first thing that I'm going to do is introduce some flux. And then the second thing I'm going to do is introduce a little bit of chip quick. This is a 4 eutectic mixture of a bunch of metals that has a very low soldering point. It's also very brittle, so it's not solder that you would want to ever leave on. But I want to get that mixed with all of the other solder there. And that is free. Boom, boom, boom. And that is still liquid. But I can't leave it on the board, otherwise it will, you know, if I tried to resolder with that, it would leave a mess. So you have to make sure, if I did do that, I would go in with some solder braid and then remove the rest of that. But that stuff stays liquid for a really, really, really long time. Right? Kind of cool. Let's use that same technique to liberate this joystick. The other way that I would do this if I didn't have these materials is with heat. Hot air gun. Not just heat, but a hot air gun. Sorry. So I'm just going to melt a little chip quick on there to make sure it mixes with the other solder. And then heat up both of them. And off it goes. Boom, boom, boom. Right? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now, again, if I was in the business of caring about reusing those pads, I would need to clean that stuff off. So I would start with a clean piece of desoldering braid. Heat this stuff up and let it soak right into the braid. And as you can see, there's ample amounts of it. I would just keep doing that until I had clean pads again. And then I would probably re-tin the pads. So it takes a minute, but you don't want to leave that chip quick on because it does make things pretty brittle. Come on, big guy. You know you want to go. So see, even then, far too much on there. But this teardown's not going to take forever. Let's go ahead and go after it. So the bottom pad's relatively clean at this point. There's still a little bit of stuff on it, not too much. Okay, so Anubhav is asking, what's the extra tip on my soldering iron for? And I think what he's referring to is this thing right up here. And that is a smoke absorber. It, instead of using a stand-up fan, which is hard to get close enough on the video without making too much noise, I'm sucking up the solder smoke and flux smoke through that little hole. That's that extra tip I think you're referring to, Anubhav. Okay, we do see something here that I don't like seeing. And if Sebastian was here, he'd be losing his mind right now, because what we have are vias in pads. And those are bad because they allow this effect called solder wicking. They allow solder to escape from the pads and go into the holes, and that leaves you with a insufficiently soldered joint. But yeah, just look at that stuff just disappear from those pads. Now, there's a lot of solder on here that I could have done a better job of getting off first, but we're just kind of doing demonstration of techniques right now, so there's not any too great a reason to get too technically accurate. So we're just trying to clean up those pads a little. Just if I was going to put this thing back down, I'd want to get all of that chip quick off the pads before I did it. Anyhow, that is the basic idea for how to desolder stuff quickly and easily. You can see those pads here. So the reason that they did this, by the way, these are vias to nowhere, but they're using them as rivets. They're basically using them to make the joint stronger. Copper has a peel strength that's roughly that of painter's tape, you know, so or masking tape. So if you have something that's going to get a lot of force, and like a joystick might, you know, people ripping it left, right, back and forth, you could risk ripping those pads off the surface. Their hope is that by drilling those holes through there and plating them, that they'll make the pads that much stronger. And I do believe that works, although I would probably have gone for a smaller via diameter and a few more of them. So instead of, you know, 2 on each pad, maybe, I don't know, 6 on each pad. But that's just me. The other nice thing about doing that is you end up with far fewer spots for the solder to go in. A smaller via diameter will give you a smaller, gosh, I can't think today. Smaller via diameter will give you smaller solder wicking. So anyhow, that's just kind of a basic overview of that, and I might do it for a larger IC here in just a minute too. So we've got a little on-off switch. It's cute. It's tiny. Those AV connectors. Looks like there's an unpopulated module here. I don't know what that is, but that might be some sort of a Wi-Fi module. I'm not entirely sure. But that pretty much takes care of most of the components on that side. We've got the micro SD. That actually can be a little challenging to pull off if you have to do rework on it. And these guys, if they ever break, man, they are a pain. So before I start taking more stuff off, let's see what it is that we can figure out of how this board works. Over here we had our battery and the battery plus and minus. So power enters our board over here. I imagine we've got a protection diode there. Keep things from, you know, in case there's a reverse polarity situation, maybe. I don't know that there would be with a soldered battery, but I guess you can never be too careful. These AV components actually go into board cutouts. So it gives you a low profile, but it also eats up board space like nobody's business. We've got the main microcontroller. And who makes that? I couldn't even begin to tell you. Let me get my overhead light on here and see if that does anything for me. There's definitely an icon there, but I'm going to have to pull out my microscope to see what it says. Might be a Xilinx. I mean, an FPGA would make sense. But we'll have to wait till we get the microscope out to see. I can't really tell you. Too hard to tell right now. A bunch of test pins, right? That's all these guys. Or so you can put this thing in a test fixture, test everything out, program it. A little inductor way over here, so that we've got some power switching going on. Might be part of the battery charging circuit, I'm not sure. And I really don't know what this thing is. Typically I would say it's a clock, except the leads are too long for it to be a good clock. And I don't know what the color indicates. I don't recall ever seeing one shrink wrapped before. I mean, I want to say it's a crystal, but I don't really know. If anybody knows out there, let me know. So, interesting, interesting. All right, let's pull a few more parts off. So, if I heat these guys up, there's a lot of solder there. It's kind of a cheap trick, but if you give it a good whack, you can sometimes get the solder to jump off the pad. I don't know if that'll work here. Looks like no. So let's go back to our solder braid without the chip quick, because chip quick is somewhat expensive. So I will try it this way first. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll go to the chip quick. So flux on. I guess we can get that light back, see if that helps us out any. Don't really see it filling up the braid yet. Okay. Chip quick it is. This is good stuff. It's just kind of pricey. And I want to say unnecessarily so, but I don't really know what goes into making it or how much they sell. So who knows? So the nice thing about the chip quick is it does let you heat things up and keep them in a semi-molten state, so you can desolder them right then and there, right? You don't have to even necessarily use the solder wick. Let's see if it will do us any favors in removing this. This is an incredibly tight-pitched integrated circuit. I want to say it's somewhere on the order of about 0.5 millimeter pitch. That's hard. That is not an easy thing to solder by hand. It's something that you would really use hot air rework for, or at least I would. So if we have to, I'll pull out the hot air. But before I go down that path, let's stick with our soldering iron technique. And all I'm trying to do right now is get the chip quick, the 4U material metal to melt and mix with the other solder. I'm not trying to get anything off at the moment. I'm just trying to get more on. So the idea is that this will allow me to hopefully heat up all these joints at once and then pull this part off. Presumably so I can replace it. Although I have no intention of putting this thing back together. The show's called Mark Voids a Warranty, not Mark Fixes Stuff. Hey, check that out. We're loose. I need something to grab it, get underneath it. There we go. Now, I wasn't even trying to get it off. That's how useful this stuff is. Anyhow, now we can see that a little better. Might be a Xilinx AT-J225 something. I don't know. Lighting's bad. Interesting. Anyhow, that's how you get stuff off. And you thought it was hard. Raise your hand if you guys thought removing parts was much harder than that. I'm just kidding. I can't see you. You can put your hands down. That wasn't that bad at all. So let's take a look then under the microscope and let's see a little bit on how they routed that many lines. Maybe they have some tricks that they know about that we don't. I don't know. But we're going to want light. Where is the microscope light? And we need macro 3. And, of course, focus. So obviously have a pretty decent mess on those pads that was left behind from that desoldering I just did. If you're going to do anything to fix this board, you would certainly want to fix that. But as it stands, we see a combination of vias. You've got your standard vias like this one. Oh, off screen. And then all these little tiny micro vias. Anywhere that they've got copper poured through the board, they've connected it with a variety of vias to keep these parts from becoming unintended radiators. And they did a really good job about that. Probably could have done a few more up in the corners, but here you've got what appears to be some sort of either a ground or a power pour. I mean, I would have gone to the trouble of connecting the other traces as well. Here you can see that the via drifted, or the drill drifted ever so slightly towards that edge, but even if it had broken out, nothing bad would have happened. They had traces that were big enough here. Which is good. Had it drifted to the left, it could have been a problem. Maybe they wanted to teardrop that a little more, but certainly got away with it. Here's another issue, but they teardropped to account for that drill drift, so they wouldn't have to worry about it. Capacitor placed relatively close to the power pins. Here's another one. It's placed pretty clear. Pretty close. The return paths aren't all that clear. And I don't know that they're all that low inductance. Maybe, of course it didn't matter. The device worked. So what does anybody care? a via fence all around the edge. I mean, it doesn't have to be all that perfect, and it's not, but that's cool. This mouse bite pattern is a little bigger than we generally recommend. Usually we do 5 holes, but again, who cares? Mounting hole. I don't know. Is that... Oh, these are the holes for our joystick that we took off. These are the vias they put through, the stitching vias. Here's how they made buttons. So there were membrane switches that would connect these elements together. And I'm just looking around now, seeing if there's anything to see. That's a oopsie. I don't know why there's just a random triangle of copper there. Just some schmutz. I mean, nothing too exciting. It's... Oh, that's weird. I'm just looking here at how they did the teardrops or the transitions. It's kind of odd, that's all. Sometimes you do something like that for impedance matching, but it looks like this section of the board maybe was done differently than the other sections. Maybe different software or a different designer with different settings. Excuse me. Sorry about that. An interesting connection technique. Usually you have a decoupling cap on each and every input pin. So I don't know why they shared. Some little diodes. You can see the bond wires inside there. And then we're about back over to the beginning again. Little itty bitty tiny switches. Cute little guys, but hard to source. And then here's that part, the color-coded part. And again, I don't really know why that is. It's got to be a... Yeah, it's got capacitors. This has got to be a crystal. But why there's a crystal that is coded in the color, I don't know. Here's another mouse bite. You can see they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 drills. It's just a little unnecessary. But other than that, nothing too crazy. It's a pretty clean board overall. They've got most of the traces on the opposing layers running at right angles to each other. I mean, this thing would have taken a day or two to route. You know, setting up all the rules would have taken a good couple, 3 hours. You know, placement another good couple, 2 hours. Running all the traces would have taken, you know, or at least it would have taken me at least a day based on the number of them. And then there's verification and all of that. This is interesting that they did it in this manner. I kind of like it. They could have gone a little further up, but this way if the drill wanders down, it doesn't keep the traces from working. Interesting, interesting. Just a bunch of horizontal traces. I'm guessing on the other side we're going to see the vertical counterparts. So this is all just jumping from one side to the other. I don't see that they've got a continuous ground plane, but I don't know what they've got going on in the middle of this board. I mean, there's certainly some things to do differently, and I don't think we're going to be able to see into the board. Let's see if that is even focusable. I can see one to 3 layers of fiberglass in the inside. I can't tell if there is any copper in between those layers. They would have stepped it back from the edge. I'm just looking for a spot where it might have snuck through. It's possible they did all this in 2 layers. I can't really tell if there's copper in there at all. It doesn't look like it from here. But, well, if they did that all in 2 layers, that is certainly impressive. It also helps keep the costs down. You know, you end up not doubling the price of your board. Okay, let's see what else there is to see. Uh-oh, that's not the right camera. What do we got going on there? Uh-oh. There we go. So let's go over to Mr. LCD next. So the LCD is in this nice little sheet metal enclosure to make it strong, like bull. Okay. So all I'm doing is getting to the side of the quick clips there, trying to get this out. All right. So this is actually the LCD part of the LCD. And you can kind of see a little bit of colors coming through there. Basically what we've got are 2 sheets of polarized film separated by all these little cells that have a liquid crystal in them. And the liquid crystal has electricity go through it, and that changes the orientation of the crystal to let light through. The light is supplied back here. This is just a diffusing sheet. There's a little edge mount LED. Sometimes these things are not LEDs, but they'll be not CRTs. I can't think of the name of it right now, but these little fluorescent tubes, which are bad for the environment. Let's see if I can go to a different camera here and zoom out. So there's a little piece of plastic that the light will diffract through. It'll get diffused out by some clear paper or semi-transparent paper on the front and white, reflected by white plastic at the back. And then we've got this. Come on out, little guy. There it is. This is the LED strip. Like that camera's a little hot there. Have to change that. So you've got all these little LEDs that will shine up through into this plastic. The plastic is kind of scratched, so the light that comes in the edges will end up coming out the face of these things and bounce all around, bounce through the LCD display, which again, it's just 2 little bits of glass with polarizing film with the liquid crystal inside. And you can kind of make out, not really though, I'm not going to point it out. I mean, let me see if I just set it down. We're seeing moire patterns, but you can kind of see that there are indeed at least cells inside that. So, and Anubhav, thank you for that. I don't know what's going on with the video, but I will investigate it once this is done. So, no, what's going on? There we go. So with that, that is Mark Voids a Warranty for today. That was kind of an interesting one. There was a lot of technology packed into that tiny little thing. It looks like we are still not on air. There we go. There was a lot of technology packed into that tiny little thing. Sorry about that camera. I don't know why the settings suddenly changed and it got all bright on me mid-video. But that was interesting. Anyways, I hope you learned something. I hope you had fun. I hope you have a costume for Halloween. Do something interesting out there today, guys. But thanks for spending time with me today. I do hope you have a great holiday, and I'll see you next week for Mark Voids a Warranty. Take care. Bye.